Greetings to you all. Greetings from the U.S. Washington, D.C. is my mountain. The Potomac is my river. And like Randy, I'm also hoping for some big changes next week. Not enough, I'm sure. But Washington's it's a challenging place to be in these days. Boston on the East Coast in Massachusetts is where I'm from. And my family, also like Randy's, came originally from Russia. My great-grandparents all came from there in about the 1890s to the East Coast of the U.S. Wolfson is my family, Wendy's my name, and greetings to all of you. Thank you. So let me also tell you about a little bit about my journey really quickly in terms of sort of being up here. I am that analytic, finance-oriented MBA. I started that way, or I was that person. And about 20 years ago in Washington, D.C., I was looking to do something a little different. And I was approached by a couple people who wanted to start a venture fund. So we were co-founders in 1997 of a small venture fund to invest just in women entrepreneurs. We invested across the U.S. We was not enough deal flow, even on the East Coast for us. So we were, at the time in 1997 in the U.S., there were 3 other tiny funds investing in women entrepreneurs. 3 years later, we looked around and said, this whole angel investing piece, which was slightly earlier, there were no women, hardly any women doing angel investing at the time. We actually had to leave Washington to go down to North Carolina and meet one woman who was doing angel investing. So we started a group of 85 high net worth women in Washington doing angel investing into local deals. It was a tough time to create funds, 99, 2000. We lived through the tech boom, then the tech bust. Then we lived through 9/11. We had companies that stayed in the portfolio for a very long time. We had the final company in the portfolio in 2008, had a deal to be acquired in September 2008. A couple of weeks later, Lehman Brothers, market crash, deal was pulled, and so the last company was in the portfolio finally exited in 2012. So it was a really slow and patient process. Along the way, I basically said, I'm not running another fund. I've done this. It's torturous. I went off and I started working with high net worth women in really ultra high net worth families because so many of them really didn't understand business or finance, and they were expected to take over their family businesses, often cashed out family businesses where the wealth became the business. And what I really found more fascinating than the business teaching there was the leadership issues involved. And the leadership development space is really what captivated me. And I really started focusing a lot on how to teach women how to lead and step into leadership and where were the roadblocks and stumbling blocks. That led me to go off and actually get certified as an executive coach. So that is my current day job. And so listening to Janine's story yesterday really hit home a lot, and listening to Randy's comments about how much entrepreneurs could use coaching is really where my heart is these days. I spend a lot of time at an incubator for social entrepreneurs in DC, and I do a lot of coaching there. They all get coaching, which I think is quite phenomenal. And then I get to also critique their pitches and their business models. So along the way, the most recent part of the journey is someone came to me and said there are not enough women getting venture capital funding. The way to address that, or angel funding, is to have more women in these roles, more women being the investors. We need to create a new fund, yet again, to teach women how to do the investing. And so I'm on the investment committee for the Next Wave Impact Fund, which is 99 women investors, led by an investment committee of 11 women across 11 cities in the US. All the pitches are virtual. And we do a lot of teaching and mentoring and support of both the entrepreneurs, but also our investors. So that leads me to say also to Randy's comments about why you, why now, why this. I've seen what's changed. I see so many more women in the room, and I look around this room and I'm bowled over by the number of women in this room. That's changed. What hasn't changed is the percentage of funding that they get, and I have a couple statistics to show you. And what needs to change, I think, are our approaches in many ways. So before I ask the panel about diversity, I'm just going to set the context with a couple of quick slides, really fast. So I don't know if you can see this. This is a McKinsey study that probably a lot of people have seen. And it basically says for companies in the same assessment, 2014, 2017, for companies, exec teams in the top quartile of diversity, their results are appreciably better for both gender diversity and ethnic and cultural diversity. So why diversity? The results show a piece of that. What's the deal with female founders? Also stats you've probably all seen from PitchBook over here. This is the percentage of, the red is the percentage of venture money to female founders. The dark blue is male founders. And the gray on the right is mixed teams. And on this side of me, sorry for blocking this, the short answer is that women are very efficient with the money they raise. For smaller dollars, they produce better results. What are the solutions? This statistic is from TechCrunch and Harvard Business Review. For VCs that have female partners, they do a lot more investing in female founders. What are the answers? There are new funds that are springing up still, small VC funds to invest in women. And I'll let you read that one for a moment. Here's why it matters. I want to introduce, or I'll let our panelists introduce themselves. You've seen, if you were here yesterday, you probably heard from everybody, but for those of you who weren't, I'm going to let you just say a couple words, and I'm going to ask you to answer the question at the same time. I've talked a lot about women in my background, and I see a lot of diverse founders in general, ethnically, at the Halcyon Incubator. What's your particular thesis about diversity? And why don't we start with you, Chandra?
Yeah, sure. So I guess as a bit of an introduction, my name is Chandra, and back in 2013, I co-founded a company called Crimson Education. We basically help students from all around the world now be connected to mentors at top universities to help them figure out the best pathway to those universities for them, and then also a great pathway for them into different internships and careers. So I guess my journey over the last 5 years has been a fairly interesting one, having co-founded Crimson just 6 months after I finished high school, and having a lot of sort of personal learning on the way, and seeing a lot of the growth, and I guess driving a lot of the growth that the company's had has been really exciting. So I guess in terms of diversity and my core thesis on this, I think there are two core things that we try and achieve when we talk about diversity, certainly in this context. One of them is about us as a society, and us wanting to be a society, hopefully, that really values diversity and really values inclusion. And I think that there are fantastic organizations out there that put into place great programs to help people who might have been disadvantaged at an earlier stage or in history to level up and build those skills. And then I guess the other side of that is diversity in the context of the company itself. And I think that my core thesis on this is that it's really important as an investor and as a founder that it's really, it's essential that diversity is not just about the faces that you see around you. So diversity is about the thinking and the value that you get from the thinking at the table. So as we've sort of grown Crimson over the last 5 years, what's been, I guess, quite interesting is that myself and Jamie, who I co-founded Crimson with, were very young. So we had, I guess, no preconceptions around what starting a company or working in a company or being a leader really meant. And as a result of that, there were a few things that kind of characterized our workforce. One of them was that we hired a team that was very young. So the median age at our company over the last 5 years, I guess, has sort of increased. But at one stage it was 22. Right now it's sitting at about 25. So we had a lot of young people running around. And these people, I guess, were very passionate. They they're very smart young people, came from different backgrounds, and I guess the value that they really brought was this fearless energy to approaching problem solving, and I think that it's really interesting and exciting to have that. And as Crimson's evolved, what we've been really lucky to see as well is as we've had this mindset to really fostering and wanting to nurture diversity in thought, we've brought on people with more experience too, who have brought that, I guess, expertise and the tactical experience in different sectors and in different parts of the business to help us grow and expand a little bit quicker than we were doing before. So yeah, I guess my core thesis is that as a society we want to sort of foster inclusion and build diversity, and as a company we want to build this this diversity in thought. And I think that the idea of doing that, doing both of those things should be something that we think about and focus on, but maybe not do it together all the time. So we don't focus on hiring people for the sake of hiring them for their gender or their background or their race. And what we really focus on is getting the right person for the right role. But at the same time, I think we're all very aware of the fact that there are people from different backgrounds who might not have the same starting point that others did. So yeah, we're very supportive of other programs in the community, and certainly create a lot of those with our student community to help create a level playing field for people to have that opportunity.
So a lot of diversity on age and thought and culture.
Well, I guess it's a lot of diversity in thought that in many cases looks like people who come from different backgrounds, and people who are of different ages, and people who come from different industries.
Yeah. Jeffrey, how does it play out for you as a venture investor?
Okay, so hi. Good morning. So maybe I'll try her thing that is quite cool.
Oh, please.
So I represent Asia. Singapore is kind of Asia, not China. My mountain is Bukit Timah, but it's actually a small hill. My river is just one Kallang River, which needs some cleaning. Now, I don't look typical Singaporean, right? So, so my background ethnically is I'm a quarter British. So my grandfather came to fight the war in Singapore, and he didn't go back, or else I'll be in Sussex now. And then the other side of me is Chinese. So I'm a quarter Teochew and half Cantonese. So I do speak English, I do speak Mandarin, I do speak Cantonese, and a lot other dialects. Last name is Payne, which somebody mentioned Thomas Paine. There's a John Payne here somewhere. And my first name's Jeff, so that's me. So maybe I'm the token kind of white male here. Okay.
I think your diversity all in one person.
Yeah, cool, right? So when I'm in Singapore, people think I'm foreigner. When I'm overseas, people think I'm Asian, so that's kind of cool. But the only place that I feel home and they feel like I'm local is Kazakhstan. So that's why I go there quite often. So for us, actually, when I was kind of called to this panel, I didn't realize a lot of things until we did a call, right? So I'll just mention a few things. One is investing in founders, and then one is internal, right? So, so actually we don't have a thesis for diversity. So it may be, so I'm trying to figure out why. So it may be because Singapore is, right, in a way, 5 million people, we have about 2 million foreigners. We are naturally already quite diverse. And then when I look at my portfolios, about 15% of the companies have female founders. And then when I looked at the first deal that we did on Fund 3, which is like a couple months ago, it's a solo female founder from Bangladesh, which is like another culture completely different from us. So on my side, when we look at the lens of founders, to me, they're just a founder, so I don't really have anything. Now, as we look at my firm, half of my firm is female. And then I was like, oh, that's maybe a little bit too high. Then I'm like, no, it's fine. So we didn't even sort of thought that we should or shouldn't have. So then I was thinking maybe I should have thought of this like 6 years ago. But then I was like, oh, maybe just the way we are. So I would say it's more on our values, not on the thesis. Now, in emerging countries, we invest in Southeast Asia, so a lot of countries are emerging. We do favor things that are a bit more inclusion focused, so financial inclusion and education. And both, sometimes when you look at the bottom of the pyramid, both kind of angle towards the females, right? So if you were to lend money to micro entrepreneurs, usually you lend it to the females. So that's how kind of emerging countries sustain themselves and grow. Yeah, and then on my partner level, unfortunately, we have 4 partners, all males, but our employee number 2, which heads portfolio management, she's female, so she's involved with every single deal. And of course, being in Singapore, and I think some of you have been flying around Asia a lot, I have 5 chat apps. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
I don't have 2 phones, but I have 5. A lot of them have 2 phones.
Yeah.
I have 5 chat apps. Every chat app has a group, and when I see a deal, I will ask, right? So my younger cousins, they're on IG, right? They're on Instagram, so I'll ask, like, when I see a deal that is kind of skewed towards the young, I'll ask them, do you guys know what this is? Which I obviously don't. So I'll start to kind of like, ask my network around. So I would include them as part of my diversity because, we need as much help as we can.
Yeah, great, thank you. Marissa, your focus has been largely on women. So talk about your thesis about diversity and also say a little bit, I think Randy brought up this notion that there is still this idea that being in a room together, creating more comfort, more confidence, more comfort is something that seems to work.
Absolutely. So my name's Marissa Warren. I'm the CEO and founder of Elevarco. So we're a global not-for-profit empowering women tech entrepreneurs. I launched it in New York mid-2015, have since rolled it out to Sydney, Melbourne, and then we've just launched this year in San Francisco. The programs that we have are around getting women pitch ready for investment funding, but then also connecting them to investors to get funded, to help solve those problems of what less than 2% of venture funding is going towards women. I mean, I'm just appalled by those stats. So my background personally before starting this, so I like to say I came from the sort of boring-ass corporate world. Startup world was a lot more interesting. But I started in the tech industry in '97, so I've seen quite a few waves. Worked at SAP, Microsoft, and Workday across Australia, and then in New York. And for me, during that period, extremely male-dominated. Yes, I had awesome male mentors to help progress me up the corporate ladder. But unfortunately, I never had female mentors. And when I'd reach out to females in executive positions, whether it was here in Australia or the US, they'd fall into 1 or 2 categories. Either they would see me as a competitive threat and wouldn't want to help, or worse still, pretend to help. So, that's really, much harder to read. Or old school was, no, I fought my way to get up to this position. There are a limited number of seats at the table for women. You have to do the hard yards yourself. And I got to this point in my career. I was living in New York at the time, and I just went, quite frankly, this is bullshit. We are so much stronger when we come together and help each other. Why don't we as women do that? The guys, you guys do it really well. You might compete against each other, but you'll help each other. But we as women, we're just not, I think it's been harder for women to progress up the ladder, so that's brought out some more competitive natures.
So you're using that diversity to sell. I'd love to hear Chandra and Jeffrey talk about sort of from a real value creation. Not just values, but value creation in terms of results. What is the value of diversity? Can you quantify it? Can you show results? If you look at your deal flow? Any thoughts about that?
I think I can start with internal. So I think internal, it definitely makes sense for our women in the firm to speak up right? So it takes a bit of time. So I think it's a confidence thing. So when they're new, when they're junior, they don't tend to speak up. So when, you know, like Angela, which is like employee number 2, she doesn't care anymore. So she'll say whatever she thinks. So I tend to let them do it. And then I'm being introvert. I also know at a group setting or a partners meeting kind of setting when almost everyone is in a room, sometimes they don't speak up. So I have to kind of do it on a one-to-one basis. Then I have a mother, I have a wife, so I know women have sixth sense. So that's why. I think investors kind of, we have this, might be a bad thing, that we try to judge people within 15 minutes, right? This is roughly what we do, because there's just too much stuff to do. So when I cannot read somebody, I'll bring someone in to help me out. So usually someone female, someone from a certain ethnic background as well. Sometimes it's from a certain country. I can't tell. So these are things that I use for at least engaging and understanding founders quicker.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So that's not just about value creation, but about the challenges of diversity, right? Trying to read people that you aren't quite as familiar with is a real challenge. And we do, it's been made several times. We tend to associate with and are more comfortable with people who look like us, who we have some sense of how they think, even if that's not really true. So, Chandra, you've talked about, when we spoke ahead of time, what I thought was really interesting, which was, for you, one of the challenges of diversity by adding age diversity. Talk about what you've had to do to accommodate that.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. I guess in terms of sort of fostering an environment where diversity can happen, or inclusion can happen really effectively, I think it's something that you have to be really aware of. So it's often about culture, right? It's about the way that people interact in an organization. And I guess the way I define culture is the shared set of beliefs that a group of people have, and these people are often working towards a similar goal. So when you get sort of people coming in who have different experiences or different backgrounds, or they're different ages, or maybe they come from different ethnic groups. Sometimes one of the challenges of diversity is that if you don't understand how to create an environment where people can effectively work together, then people can just feel isolated, and you don't get the value. You don't get the value of having all these people in the room. So something that we had to learn how to do, and by no means have we figured this out how to do perfectly yet. I think it's something that we learn about every day. It's about really learning how to create that environment. And I guess the biggest contributing factor that I've found so far in effectively being able to do that is actually about listening, and it's about questioning. And I think that, if you want to get the full value out of diversity, which I'd love to talk about a little bit more as well, you have to be really open-minded to the fact that in order to be effective as an organization, and in order to achieve your goals, whatever they might be, there's going to be some sort of optimal solution that maybe one person can't just define on their own. So if you go into some sort of conversation or discussion that might be centered around problem solving, it's really important that I think you come into the discussion knowing that you're there to collaborate and learn with other people. So this idea of being open-minded, and I guess, questioning has been a really big one for us. So this was something that I guess as young founders, myself and Jamie, had to learn, because I guess stepping into this, we both are very strong personalities, and at the best of times think that we know what's right. But we realize that we have a lot to learn. So being open-minded to learning from people who have different experiences was a big thing. But then also when people came into the organization, I guess learning very quickly how to be a coach to them, and also helping them understand what questions might be the right questions to ask, and what are the things that you should be listening for, was also really important. So I think for us, really getting that balance right and figuring out how you get the most out of that diversity was a really big thing. But certainly now, if I reflect on how our organization has evolved and grown, I think one of the core parts of our culture is that we're a very inquisitive company. So a lot of our team, whether they are, from Auckland and have lived there their whole life, or whether they are, a parent of 3 kids and is now living in Hong Kong but lived in the US, everyone is very curious and very open to understanding and challenging each other, regardless of what the background or experience is like. So I think that's very important. And then also on the question of value creation, hope you don't mind sharing my thoughts on this too. I think the real value that diversity creates is something that's really important for people to think about and understand. And my perspective on this is that, we live in a world now where, whether you like it or not, the people that you're trying to service with whatever your innovation or your product or service is are a diverse group of people, right? Or the organizations that you're trying to service are diverse if you're in a B2B type environment. And I think it's important to recognize that, because I think that it would be very naive to think that you could deliver the most value to your customers by having a singular perspective or viewpoint. So I really think that the most diversity can bring, or the greatest value that it can add, is actually by allowing investors and allowing management teams to really understand that in order to get the most, to add the most value to your customers, you really have to be thinking about things from different perspectives, because you don't, like me sitting here as, I guess, a South African Indian young person who spent most of their life in New Zealand, my perspective and my life experience is absolutely not going to be the same as everyone else in the rooms. So I think that it's super important that that leaders, whether you're an investor or whether you're on the board or whether you're a founder or someone who works in a company, really recognize the fact that meeting the needs of a diverse community is actually what the recipe to success is in many businesses. Because if you don't recognize that, then you're going to be developing something, whether it's a service or a product, that's not really going to be adding the most value to your customers, which I'm sure probably won't help you achieve the business goals that you have. So I think that's probably the biggest value that diversity brings.
Yeah, and really helping the company grow.
Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes, and I would love to have the panel sort of just give you a couple key takeaways, or how many minutes?
I was going to help with questions, but no.
Oh, okay. No, but I was going to say I'd love to have questions from the audience about diversity, because clearly there is an anxiety around what it means and what it feels like, and particularly what it feels like to be a white male these days and be bombarded with this notion that diversity is important. And how do you start feeling not defensive about that, but actually being able to embrace it? So I'll open that up and say, who wants to comment on that or pose a question?
Trevor? Yeah. You've got a box.
I need the box. It's interesting. I was doing my little straw poll with my exits as we were talking.
Yeah.
Just to see male, female, and founders and all that.
What did you discover?
Well, I've had 30 exits.
Wow.
Right? 20.
I was going to say, how many of those are positive exits? Okay. Yep.
20 dead and buried.
Yep.
10 positive.
Yep.
And I've over 100, 90 live companies still, right? So I haven't looked at the live companies, I've just looked at the exits, just to get a feel for it. Now, I am of a certain persuasion. I'm a pale male, but I'm not stale.
Yes, does everybody know that? That's the newest thing I love. It's PMS.
Which really, can I say, pisses me off, right?
Yeah.
Right. Because I come from a working class background, north of England, military family, moved around a lot, lived in lots of places. So I think I bring a certain perspective to all of these different personalities, you see. So my perspective is that I'm actually a very agreeable, friendly person. That's my name. Everyone knows me. And I like to invest in startups. I like dealing with young people. And it doesn't matter whether male, female, black, white, yellow, green. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to me. So I did this quick straw poll, and I thought, okay, of the 20 failures, 13 were totally male, and 7 were either female founders or mixed. Of the 10 successes, 9 were all male, and 1 was mixed.
Interesting.
So, that
What's your
doesn't...
takeaway from that?
It doesn't... I don't know. Maybe I invest in the wrong companies. Who knows? But I would say of the other 90 that are still alive, they're a real mixture. There's probably a more male only than mixed, but in New Zealand we produce good startups. And the big problem we got is where do we take the startups afterwards when we get them into a certain size? So yeah, that's just and I only did this for Suze, so thanks Suze for making me do this work. And my thought is, I would like to hear other people's thoughts, whether that's a common experience for them. Because mine don't fit the norm at all.
So anyone have a thought? And I'd love to also just show of hands, how many groups actually see female founders, or how many of you feel like you just don't see very many female founders? Right. Put it that way, yeah.
So can I have the question box? I'm the chair of AANZ.
Yeah.
Right, ready.
Concentrates on investing in female.
Whoa. Okay. Pass and the assist.
So I would have to, obviously we only look at companies that have a woman factor in the company. It doesn't have to be a sole female founder. It doesn't have to be a woman who is a founder, but it has to at least have some serious women in senior management, at least. So I would say that we are seeing more higher quality companies than where we've been going about 5 years. I think we're seeing more companies. I think that one of the biggest changes that I've experienced in the ecosystem, and I've been a member of Ice Angel since 2011, but Archangel's only started following on from, we had one of our founding members who was a member of Golden Seeds in the US and brought back that concept to New Zealand, only started in about 2013. 2014. One of the biggest differences I've seen is that the first investment evening I went to at Ice Angels, there was one other woman in the room. And I think there are far more women investors involved in all of the networks throughout New Zealand. We're based in Auckland. But I think one of the things we find is that we tend to attract more women investors. Women need that confidence, need to build their confidence in becoming investors. I think we also find that women find the experience, the women founders or even just the companies, find the experience of dealing with being at an investment evening or just dealing with a club that is actually focused primarily on women, a different experience from that they have at the other angel networks. So obviously my portfolio, though Robbie will tell you, I'm spray and pray, I'm in every one of the showcase funds, but my portfolio obviously has a lot more women represented than perhaps some of the others in the room.
Yeah.
Can I
please.
just make a comment
Yep.
on some of the observations I've seen, and I get this thing constant, whether it's in Australia or the US. Oh, we have a pipeline problem of finding, female founders. And again, I'm going to use that word. Bullshit. We don't. You're just not trying hard enough. You're not tapping into, the different networks that these women. Like I said, 95% of our women don't have a tech background, but they're also not in the networks of power. So they don't have those investors around them. So it's thinking about how you're going to get out, and find these great women. I mean, we've had we get every year well over 500 women applying to our different programs. We've had 120 through so far since we launched in 2015. And we see these, great women all the time. One of the things that attracts them to us is that we're female focused, so to the lady's point, Angels around building their confidence. So these women, no matter whether it's the women that were showcased yesterday, or we also have one that's a VP at Bank of America in New York. She was on the campaign trail of Hillary Clinton, and she said to me, Marissa, the thought of pitching to a room full of investors just scares me. And so you have these very accomplished women, but starting businesses for the first time and pitching to investors is a scary process. For them coming into a safe environment, being able to learn, understand what it is that you investors want to hear from them, helping them around that. It's amazing how much confidence that builds for them to then go and take the next step and then seek investment. So I think that's part of that problem around the 2%. That's, yes, we see the women starting the businesses, but it's they don't have those networks, and it's that lack of confidence in pitching to be able to get out there.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. And you said, I'm going to leave you with one word, which was your comment about what can we leave you with, we've run out of time, which is for everybody in the room we talk about wanting vetted deals and vetted entrepreneurs. For everybody in the room to make one warm intro to your group for a founder that represents some level of diversity, whether it's ethnic, gender, cultural, age, thought, somebody that is not typically in your network, making an intro to someone else, for someone else, something to help someone penetrate the network and increase the pipeline. So that's my last word for all of us. Thank you all.
Well,